Funding for NEOtropolis has been provided by the following.
Hello, I'm Lester Lefton. Kent State University is proud to sponsor NEOtropolis, a program that looks at the forces that impact the region. Kent State is one of those forces. As a center of educational excellence and as an economic development engine, our efforts at Kent State have a powerful and positive impact on the region through research and development, the arts and innovation, and preparing our graduates to compete in the global marketplace. I hope you enjoy the program, and I invite you to learn more about Kent State University.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, supporting transformational ideas that promote informed and engaged communities.
Hello and welcome to NEOtropolis, the show about the forces of technology, globalization, and diversity, how they impact the way we live, work, learn, and play. I'm Luke Frazier, your host and guide for the NEOtropolis journey. Tonight, an uncommon approach to conversation via the Civic Commons, writing old-fashioned letters on the most advanced artisan paper, and a Culture Mark segment exploring all the buzz around being in the know. And by the end, you'll know just what all this means to you. Tonight's episode is called Global News, Local Views, and we'll try and get at just how digitalized our news and conversation about news has become. Used to be every news story was maybe followed by a letter to the editor, but now it's trailed by lots of reader comments instead. But we'll also explore how the very same idea of letter writing has become an advanced communication tool, especially as it relates to the actual paper that's being used. The studio is buzzing with all the news that's fit to broadcast, but first, let's make a visit to the Wonderwall. NEOtropolis' Wonderwall is the first stop every week for a question that we want you to respond to with all the tech tools at your disposal. Put it out there with your best tech foot forward. Joining me now is NEOtropolis' social media expert, Kathleen Colin. Hey, Kathleen.
Hi, Luke.
How are you?
I'm good. Hi, everybody.
So what is going on the Wonderwall tonight?
Tonight, the Wonderwall question is, in what format do you get most of your news information? Print, broadcast, internet, or in conversation? And it's an important question to ponder because, as we know, the media landscape is changing. And according to a recent survey by the Pew Research Center, most Americans get their news from television. We know that. But the big news from last year is that online news readership overtook newspapers. So more people are getting their news from online and from mobile than ever before.
And I wonder, though, there's the combination piece, too, though, because I'll go to a newspaper, but then I'll also follow up online.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's many sources, and as we also know, mainstream media outlets have altered the way they deliver news because of that, because you may be getting it from the newspaper online, with the addition of videos, radio, podcasts, and social media with traditional media.
So what does this mean? What does this mean for me as a consumer?
For you as a consumer, you have a great opportunity, as we all do. It's easy for you to customize your own news now with social media. You can create lists of your favorite journalists, broadcasters, pundits with Facebook, Twitter, Google+, so you can have all the smartest people in the world feeding information right onto your desktop.
If I choose someone from the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, I'll be extra smart.
Exactly. Exactly.
So how can people weigh in tonight on this question and on any question or any explanation they want?
Well, they can reach us on all of our social networks, and they can learn more about how to customize their own news feed on our blog at neotropolis.org. But please, weigh in with us on this question and any other issues. Facebook.com/Neotropolis TV, Twitter @Neotropolis TV, and Google+ at Neotropolis.
Excellent. Thanks, Kathleen.
Thanks,
We'll
Luke.
check with you later in the show for some answers. So off the Wonderwall to a short clip from a NEOtropolis Not Business as Usual piece from last season, detailing some of the online connections made by the Youngstown Business Journal Daily. I want to use it to launch our discussion about news and information in the digital age. Right after that, we'll hear from a guy with a really cool title, Curator of Conversation.
The most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
A fictitious offering, but with substantial merit. And for many in the Mahoning Valley, their source for the information of business is a hot commodity called the Business Journal Daily. Andrea Wood serves as president and editor-in-chief. She developed this product from its inception at a critical timeline in the area's economic history.
We're tired of talking about the death of steel. We wanted to talk about business that was growing and prospering, and that's still our mission, is to build business in the Mahoning Valley.
Andrea was also a television pioneer in the Valley. She was the first newswoman as anchor and reporter at ABC affiliate WYTV in Youngstown, building a reputation as one of the area's top journalists. Seeking a new challenge, Wood blended a spirited sense of entrepreneurship with a unique local news perspective to bring her new project to fruition. The bi-monthly newspaper has evolved to a 45,000 readership and growing. But as the newspaper industry faces consumer challenges from competition with expanding media, she has sculpted her product in a way that has not been business as usual.
Well, we're not part of a large business journal chain. There is a chain of business journals, and they own most of them in the country. We're independently owned. We're owned by ourselves. Okay. And we've created our own product, our own template. We're not like any other business journal in that sense. It's very localized to our community. Our website is different than any other website here in town. We do an actual daily newscast on our website, and that's certainly not business as usual. The idea of television online is happening now across the country, but in many ways we were kind of ahead of the curve in that regard.
Now we're going to take a stand on a platform just made for conversations. The Civic Commons is a regional initiative to bring citizens into contact and conversation that really matters. Joining me now is our curator of conversation, Dan Malthrop. Hey, Dan.
What's up, Luke?
How are you?
I'm well. Good to see you.
Got to tell folks I actually do some work with the Civic Commons, so I'm familiar with Dan and the great work there.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you're being transparent. Transparency is one of our guiding principles.
At the Civic Commons.
That's
perfectly.
Right.
Well, tell me just in a nutshell what the Civic Commons is about, and then we can talk about how it affects our world.
We do a lot of work in the community, but for the purposes of our conversation here on NEOtropolis, I'll just talk about what we do online. And online, it's social media for civic good. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, right now, there's a very important race for county prosecutor in Cuyahoga County. 5 candidates running in the Democratic primary, which, given the demographics there, it's pretty much the general election happening right now. Right. Most people who are interested in that race can't actually make it to one of the public forums. Yeah. So we're hosting a forum right now at theciviccommons.com for over 3 days, and it's all in text. You can go right now and ask any question you want, and the candidates will eventually respond. All 5 candidates are participating.
So is that a viable alternative to actually being there in person? I mean, we have this technology.
No, it's not an alternative. Yeah. It doesn't replace anything. It's a complement or a supplement. You can never replace, when you're talking about civic engagement, face-to-face contact is the most important thing. But we can, with all of these emerging technologies, with social media, we can actually extend the conversation to more people. So you have, I know you're talking a lot about diversity tonight, so that you can extend it to a more diverse audience. Yeah. Because a lot of these public meetings or public forums, you get the people who are great, who are involved, who have time to be involved, but you don't get a lot of people who are busy running their own businesses or raising kids and so forth.
So there's a slice of people who really, because of the way it's run, are less likely to be involved. Are those people coming to something like the Civic Commons?
Bit by bit, we're getting them to come, but it requires a change of behavior, and that's the hard part.
Well, it's because we're used to doing things a certain way. Even you just heard us talking about newspapers versus other sources of news. But when we talk about all these forces, globalization, diversity that impact us, how does the Civic Commons trying to address the fact that news can be instantaneous, that things can be overnight in a cycle of, it used to be a 24-hour news cycle. Now what is it?
It's a 60-minute or 60-second news cycle sometimes. But what we try to do at the Commons is put everything in context. And a lot of times what happens in this frenetic news environment is we lose track of the context. Take this fracking conversation that's happening right now.
The one that's causing earthquakes?
It's allegedly, it's not the fracking that's causing the earthquakes, but the injection wells, and we can get into that if you want, but we don't probably have enough time. The thing is that you see coverage about this, and if it's coming from the business side of things, it's all about business, yay, great stuff, and it has no context. It doesn't actually mention the environmental impact or potential environmental impacts. Right. It's such a complex topic that it's really hard to bring in all the context into every story.
Well, that's certainly...
So that's what we try to do.
Yeah, because it is so true sometimes that things feel context-free.
They come in a vacuum or something like that, and nothing exists in a vacuum.
Right. What other things is the Civic Commons trying to get into in terms of making this technology really work for citizenry?
Here's the deal. There are roughly 4 million people in Northeast Ohio. 2.5 million are adults. I'm using back-of-the-envelope figures here. If we could get 10% of that group to give us 10 minutes a week to just engage in a conversation about whatever issue matters to them, we would have, in 1 year, over 2 million hours of engagement.
Excellent.
What can you do with that, Luke?
You can do a lot. Thank you, Dan Malthrop,
Thank you,
Curator
Luke.
Conversation at the Civic Commons. Coming up, we're going to take a giant step back from digital technology and put pen to paper. Handmade paper. Is it all that retro, or is it a brave new communication of the future?
Be part of the conversation. Follow us on Twitter at NEOtropolis TV and on Facebook, YouTube, and Google+. When you visit neotropolis.org, check out the archives and sign up for our e-newsletter.
So we're here at the Morgan Conservatory. You can find out all kinds of information at the morganconservatory.org. And we're going to talk to its executive director, Tom Balbo. And I want to really get at with him this notion that communication that takes place on handmade paper, because they do a lot of things with handmade paper here, and on kinds of old-fashioned printing. What does that really mean? How does that compare to our world of digital communication and all kinds of fast, efficient modes of relating to one another? So we sat down and I asked him a bunch of questions about what that means. What is the emotion? What's the attitude? What's the kind of result that you get by using handmade paper?
It brings itself to looking longer at what you're seeing. I think it's maybe a good way of putting it, that you don't just throw it away. You see the edge, you see perhaps a deckled edge, maybe not, but you see something about the quality, intrinsic quality, the sculptural nature, whether it's very fine, but there's something there that lends itself to caring. It's as if you got an invitation, if you got an Evite or you got an actual invitation in the mail, there's that, it's become that sense now that we, in the digital age, we now see that as much more precious, I think.
And you're left with 3 layers of this cellulose fiber.
It's that quality of being able to, you follow it through the process. You beat the fiber, you understand the nature of the plant, whichever it is, whether it's flax, cotton, kozo, abaca fibers, something like that. You start to understand the nature of that fiber, where it comes from, how you wash it, how you clean it, how you beat it, what it gives you as far as a feel, and each fiber gives you a different feel. And that kind of thing lends itself to the nature of that piece of paper. Obviously, a two-dimensional form, we work with a flat sheet of paper, but there's still a lot of texture and things involved in that sheet of paper. I mean, on a very, very small detail, and it shows itself that way. I think it shows itself both either in transparency or in roughness or in feel and snap and vivacity of it, the strength of it, or just that sound, that crispness. But that's all part of that touch, wanting you to touch it. Well, you could go from like a soft sheet of cotton paper, and it has kind of a real soft note, not much to it. Then you can get a flax paper or an abaca paper that's beaten really finely, and it has this really crisp, snappy, almost as if, like a drum. So it goes from, a real subtle decibel level to a real high pitch snap kind of drum sound.
So have you recently received a letter on handmade paper, or have you received cards on handmade paper?
Well, on handmade paper, I'd say for Christmas, I got a nice note from an artist friend that sent, and it's just so precious to see it, and even though I've seen thousands of sheets of handmade paper, so I think a lot of people get that right away. I mean, they get the sense when they're here that this is something special. I mean, they understand that there's more to the process than just, a sheet of paper. Why paper? And they see it, and that's what we're all about, is just giving people that sense that there is a craft to it. And even the craft that got to making your Xerox paper, there was a lot of craft, a lot of engineering, a lot of things that went into that and go into it. But it's not a lot different. I mean, there's still a lot of similarities in the paper that's produced mass and the paper we produce. Well, it's not the most efficient. Obviously, for us, you become a nonprofit, you become something else, so that the sense of craft, or the sense that you can then take that craft and make something unique and one of a kind, and then it gets on another level of value in the art world, in the world of the book, in the world of things. So it can then be something very valuable in terms of the time. You would never be able to compete with a production paper mill. We have no desire for that, and there's no market for thousands and thousands of sheets of handmade paper, but there is a nice market, a small niche market for printmakers, for bookmakers, for conservators, and a conservator needs an archival paper to preserve documents, especially the documents that are made on unarchival papers that are just falling apart.
So that was what the Morgan Conservatory looked like, and it really got me thinking. To hold a piece of art that happens to be a piece of paper, and on that paper could be anything, a love letter, a scribbled reminder, a reflection on life and liberty, whatever. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the tactile sense of meaning, the hands being on this right now. I heard you shouldn't touch your computer screen because it will leave oily smears, but on a screen, you're not touching the words on the screen. You're just a reflection in the glass. And when it comes to paper, though, the ink or pencil soaks into the fiber and it makes its mark, and it is something to feel and something to hold on to. I'm still one of those who like picking up the book, and I don't own a Kindle. Will I ever? Probably. It's just too efficient to ignore. But I know one thing. It won't feel, smell, look, or act like paper. So now we've heard about the wonders of technology and how it can facilitate, even improve, how we exchange information, distribute news. But is that all there is to consider when it comes to the speed of information and the glorification of all that is new in the realm of hyper-accelerated knowing? Joining me now to talk a bit about what kinds of impacts these ways of thinking and behaving have on all of us is NEOtropolis' Culture Mark contributor, Dave Perusic. What's up, Dr. Dave?
Hey, what's up, Luke?
How
nice
are
to
you?
be here. Good to see you again. What a good show tonight.
Excellent, thank you. And you're on it, too. So
well, let's
we'll
hope
just
that
keep
doesn't
improving.
drag the level down too much. Yeah.
So listen, we were talking about an article that you and I had both come upon, and it talked about information diet, your information diet. And is it time to go on an information diet? What do you make of that topic?
Well, actually, I enjoyed it tremendously. I think it's a beautiful analogy in terms of information to fast food, bad food, unhealthy food. Both involve the crucial contemporary cultural question of consumption. Mm-hmm. And it just happens to be the case that we live in a time and a place, a society that just entices us to consume constantly.
Yeah, food,
now, let me say,
everything else, yeah.
If you're built as I am, you begin to realize pretty early on in the game that you ought to try to be mindful.
Well, that definitely is something that we all can be, the mindfulness about the information we get, the food choices, the transportation choices, stuff like that. But what is it that may be lost if we're concerned about that speed of information?
Well, lots of things. One thing is that we can easily confuse information with knowledge. The two are by no means the same thing. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, neither does either one equate to wisdom, which is a whole other matter altogether. Sometimes the more we take in, for instance, the more food we eat, we don't necessarily get more healthy. In fact, if it's particular things, we get more unhealthy.
Yeah.
And there's something about the speed of just even acquiring raw information that can be problematic. The control of it, you talk about mindfulness, who's in charge? Sometimes I'll go online at home and I'm getting news when all I want to do is get online and go someplace.
Oh, like on a splash page or something that's coming right
absolutely,
up? Yeah,
sure.
And
by the way, how are those decisions made, too? That was part of the article as well, right?
Yeah.
That even just clicking onto something becomes a kind of editorial act that one isn't aware that one is committing, but I don't know the terminology, but the point is the more clicks on something, the more it rises in
the response, more
as
likely
a news
to appear.
item. And so that kind of makes the lowest common denominator making the editorial decisions. Journalism, my goodness. Ugh.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other show
story.
right
Yeah,
there.
right.
But, what gets me, though, is how valuable, incredibly valuable getting information quickly can be, without a doubt. And you're in an academic setting. Mm-hmm. I myself have lots of reasons to look up information, but you don't realize that in that process of picking that stuff up so quickly. Real quickly, the Stanford did a study about students who were looking at search results. and that some amazing percentage didn't even leave the first page of
Yes,
results.
that's right.
That was just accepted at face value. And if someone's working it so that comes up first, that information is considered best.
That's right. We're talking really about two things here: knowledge production, or the potential for it, and knowledge acquisition. And in the space between the production of even factoids, let's say, and that translating into knowledge, there has to be some filtering, some thinking going on.
Right.
And there has to be some distance in terms of time and space.
Excellent. So that's the kind of mindfulness that we need to pay attention to.
I think so. And again, and not just in terms of information, but I think one of the nice things about a show like this is to help us to think about what it means to be mindful in a consumer-crazed and consumption-crazed time and place.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr.
You're
Dave.
welcome.
Coming up, we're going to have a look at a big idea with Craig James. Now it's the big idea with Craig James. Welcome, James.
Thank you, sir.
What's the big idea?
I've been pondering information convergence, Luke.
Convergence, like coming together harmonically, like a symphony, or?
Great metaphor.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good.
Matter of fact, it is a beautiful crescendo of all types of information, all types of news and entertainment blending together.
Right.
You see, well, let me back up a bit.
Yeah, okay.
All right. The precursor to information convergence was technology convergence. All right, let's go back, let's say, 1 million years technology-wise.
Yeah, like 1987.
Perfect. You'd walk into an office, right, and there would be paper and paper clips and maybe some postage stamps. Now, we just learned that paper is still important, really a beautiful thing, but email arrives on the scene and everything changes, right? Email converges these technologies together, and then email, we discover, just becomes a feature on our computer, and then our computer converges to become our iPhone, then our iPhone becomes part of the internet. We're part of a global conversation.
Yeah.
Right? In the context of news, it used to be easy, right? The town crier would say, hear ye, and we'd have the news. Now, we're all yelling globally, hear me, hear me.
Hear me, hear me. Well, but that concentration you're talking about and that reason that we have to want to know all these things, I mean, isn't there the convergence of a healthy appetite for information and we want to be informed?
Well, that's perfect. As a matter of fact, yes. Dr. Dave spoke to it. Dan spoke to it. This is a change of culture. This is a change about how we interact with information, and our responsibility has upped, right? We have to understand as we mash up information, is it the source, the right source? Is it fact or fiction? So in the context of like SOPA and PIPA, we've got to think more, not
That's
less.
that legislation stuff that's been making the news around piracy and,
You got it.
and internet. Yeah.
And protection of intellectual property as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How can people find out more information? This big idea has got me going. I think other people too. How can they find out more?
That's pretty simple. Once again, it's cat-strat.com.
Thanks a lot, Craig.
Thank you, Luke.
All right. Back now with NEOtropolis' social media expert, Kathleen. How are you?
I'm awesome.
Once
Thanks,
again.
Luke.
And what are we hearing tonight on social media?
We have, again, quite a bit of discourse going on Facebook, and responses to tonight's question pretty much mirror the numbers. Most Americans get their news from television,
Right.
online a close second, and I would encourage everyone to check out the Facebook page because there's more than 10 comments with people sharing their opinions.
Excellent, excellent.
But more importantly on this topic, here's one of the comments right here from Ryan Gambrell. He's a local entrepreneur, and he's talking about some of the news aggregation sites that he uses to get his news. Flipboard, he mentioned Zeit. We were checking out something called Pulse IT today. So there's so many tools out there.
Yeah. Help
to
us
aggregate your
understand,
news.
I mean, when people talk about these tools that people use, I mean, help us understand how it really impacts, our use of news. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, now, we the people, we're in charge of choosing what news we allow into our homes. I can use any social media application, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, something new. Twitter just bought a company called Sumify that's even going to aggregate more news sources. So you can choose who to put on your
I can
social
be
media
that,
list.
Well, if I want to feel really smart, I can put McNeil Lehrer PBS NewsHour and get some of that stuff.
Exactly,
But
or
if
the
I
Atlantic
want,
Monthly.
Atlantic Monthly, you said, has some good stuff. I wonder, and if I want some entertainment, I'd like lots of places I can go to.
Absolutely, and celebrities are huge on social media. As you know,
Yeah.
lots of people follow them, but they're not the only people there. There are tons of intellectuals and media outlets, posting relevant, important information.
Yeah, and it can take you to even more relevant and important information. You can follow that path, and that's what's really nice. So how can people stay in touch during the week?
During the week, as usual, they can email us, info@neotropolis.org, on facebook.com/Neotropolis TV, on Twitter @Neotropolis TV, and on Google Plus @Neotropolis.
Yeah, that's excellent, and I really hope people do take that to heart and know that we want you to stay in touch. If you have ideas, if you have comments, please stay in touch with us. And thanks for joining us live on NEOtropolis, but never fear, the miracle of technology means you can access us 24 hours a day, every episode at neotropolis.org. I'm Luke Frazier. We'll be back next week with another NEOtropolis episode.
Funding for NEOtropolis has been provided by the following.
I'm a process engineer at a high-tech company in Ohio. We're developing cool new liquid crystal devices, like the Boogie Board tablet. It's based on technology created at Kent State University. Yeah, the research teams at Kent State are always coming up with discoveries. Discoveries that end up in real-world products. In fact, you'd be amazed at all the great things coming out of Kent State. I should know, I'm one of them. My name is Diaz McDaniel, and I'm a proud graduate of Kent State University.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, supporting transformational ideas that promote informed and engaged communities.